Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for joining tonight. Hopefully, we'll keep this session a little bit below time, so 20, 30 minutes. If you have any questions as we go along, please use the question feature where you can submit a written question, or if it's more complex, feel free to raise your hand and I can try to go in and unmute you. So just as an introduction, this is Matt Kidd. I'm Reaching Out's full-time executive director. We have a full-time staff of 3 folks, a development director and a program manager, as well as 1 part-time event producer. So you may end up interacting with any number of us, along with our student steering committee, while you prepare for ROMBA or are at the ROMBA conference. So just to jump in really quickly here, what we're going to cover tonight, I'm going to gloss over what the organization is and does. Then I'll give a high-level view of the conference, talk a little bit about the format, and then talk a little bit about recruiting and how you can best prepare for the conference, regardless of whether you're recruiting or not. So quickly here about Reaching Out. Reaching Out is an 18-year-old 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are definitively best known for the ROMBA Conference. This is the 19th year we've done that. Next year will be our 20th anniversary. But we actually now serve as a fully staffed year-round organization. Starting this fall, we're actually transforming that organization into more of an LGBT MBA association that applies to both students and professionals. So that's something we'll be talking about quite a bit at the conference. In terms of existing year-round programming, one of our other major programs is the ROMBA Fellowship or LGBT MBA Fellowship, which is with 30 schools. Each of these schools is dedicating up to 2 spots for a fellow who's guaranteed a minimum of $10,000 a year funding, and then with us gets special programming, mentorship, things along those lines. That program this year is actually giving out $1 million in scholarships, so it's pretty amazing. Beyond that, we work a lot with on-campus clubs. So we have about 50 schools that have club affiliates. Many of those club leaders join us for monthly club calls, and we do a leadership summit every spring. We also have an initiative to bring in more LBT women to business school called Out Women in Business, and essentially to raise visibility for LBT women in business, especially alumni. And then some of you may have participated in some of our treks over the summer. These are for pre-MBAs or admitted MBAs rather. We also will have 2 this fall that are for current students. So one of those will be in Boston, focused a little bit heavily on the healthcare sector, and one in Chicago that is a little bit of a cross-section of industries, including consulting, aviation, and potentially consumer product goods. We also have some international programming. So we've been holding a conference in Brazil for the last 2 years. We'll do that again next year. That's open both to graduates and undergraduates and young professionals. And in fact, we're actually seeing a lot of people come to business school who came to those conferences. So it's a bit of a feeder program. We'll expand this spring to Asia Pacific. So if you know folks there, let them know we're coming, most likely in Hong Kong. As I mentioned, we are supported by a full-time staff. We have 3 full-time staff members and 1 part-time staff member. And most of the events that we do also have some component of a volunteer steering committee, generally involving students. So the history of the ROMBA conference is that it started being led by students. And so to this day, the students still steer a large component of the content that we present at this conference. So enough about the organization, into the conference. This year, we are in Dallas, October 6th through 8th. We're at the Hyatt Regency Dallas. Towards the end of this call, I'll give you a web link where you can book your rooms. What I will tell you about rooms is that the rate is very, very cheap. We have a very good rate. And our conference falls the same weekend as a major college sports game. So the city will sell out. Other hotels will get expensive beyond what they already are. So regardless of whether you book at the host hotel or somewhere else, we do encourage that you do that pretty soon. The special rate that we have is only good until September 15th or when the block sells out, whichever comes first. And I think we're a little over 70% sold right now, so there's not a ton of inventory left. So again, if that's something that you're considering, I would encourage you to act sooner rather than later. A little bit about this year's conference. So this is our 19th national conference. It's actually really a global conference at this point. We have people coming from, or at least the last few years, we've had people coming from all continents except Antarctica. We are on track to well exceed 1,400 people this year. In fact, there are signs that we may hit 1,500. So that will be a new record for the conference. Last year's conference brought in students from 93 different graduate schools, mostly MBA students, but some other graduate business students as well. We had over 150 companies represented in some form or another. 86 of them were officially sponsoring to recruit LGBT talent on site. And our numbers look to be about the same this year. Those companies are coming from a very wide cross section of industries, so it's not just finance and consulting firms, but we see everything from technology to operations to transportation and a little bit of media as well. So there is a wide cross section of companies. The focus of the conference obviously is on LGBT students and demonstrably active allies. This is important to note. You may notice that to register as a student, you need an access code. How you get this access code is through your on-campus club, if they're an affiliate of ours, or by completing an application. The reason we use this code is we did have an issue about 5 or 6 years ago where some schools were sending basically all their students, many of whom would say fairly offensive things to our LGBT attendees, like it's okay if you choose to be gay, and it upset both our student attendees and companies. So we acted pretty quickly to change how people can access the conference. So that's why that's there. We certainly do welcome allies, but we ask that they be able to really be part of everything that's going on rather than just go to a career fair. In terms of the conference, once you pay your registration fee, there are no costs for meals or to go to the receptions. There are a lot of receptions that are open bar at this conference throughout the entire conference. The only other cost that you may incur is if you go to the Saturday night charity party. The funds from that go to a restricted fund that we have that's called the LGBT Student Fund, which helps pay for students' access to programming that we do, as well as some additional external programming. So it's a good cause. We do have 3 competitions going out collectively a little over 18,000 this year. So that's the consulting case competition, the mergers and acquisitions competition, and the startup pitch competition. Applications for all of these open next week, I believe on Tuesday, August 22nd. So keep an eye out for that. It is a great way to make some money while you're at the conference. And a lot of schools, if you participate in a competition, will help subsidize your travel. So keep that in mind as well. We also tend to have pretty top tier keynotes. We are selectively announcing some of ours right now. They'll continue to get bigger as we get closer to the conference. But in the past, last year we had Laverne Cox, we've had Dustin Lance Black, whether you like him or not, Peter Thiel. So some really interesting and inspiring folks to hear from. So the question often comes up, why should people come? Is it something for MBA 1s, MBA 2s, related grad students, pre-MBAs? Like, what's the point of coming? And the reality is there are a number of reasons to come, and they vary. So not everyone coming is going for recruiting. So a lot of people come for personal reasons, whether it's building a relationship with classmates, networking cross school, learning about the LGBT community, but a lot do come for recruiting. So formal or informal recruiting, so coffee chats, or there are also some companies that do on-site active interviewing with a few actually giving offers. Not everyone does that. A lot of them will do pre-screening, but that does happen to a limited extent. Some come for industry content, and some come for various other reasons. What I will say in terms of the question that often comes up, is it better for MBA 1s, MBA 2s? Actually, if you look at the data from the companies that are on-site recruiting, if that's the manner that you're asking the question or the context you're asking the question in, it's actually pretty split. I think about 70% of companies are looking for MBA 1s and about 70% of companies are looking for MBA 2s. Obviously, there's some overlap there between them. I would say probably about a 40% or so are looking for part-time or alumni, and I would say about 25% are interested in meeting pre-MBAs so that they can tap into them before they start school in the future. So that's essentially what it's there for. We also do have pre-MBAs who come to look or consider what it might be like to be an MBA. So keep that in mind that generally we have about 100 to 150 of those attendees, often just going to our pre-MBA fair on the Saturday of the conference. So the format of the conference, it's essentially a 2.5 day conference, with the Thursday being a half day. So the Thursday generally has a series of workshops. So for example, this year there are some about recruiting, negotiating. There's one on doing case interviews. We also have a half day of women's content on Thursday. And we do an offsite track this year, which is going to Southwest Love Field, as well as AT&T headquarters. The second day is really the career focus day. So this is where you'll find breakout sessions about topics in industries from healthcare to consulting to finance to technology. You'll find a lot of networking events as well as general sessions. So we have 3 keynote speakers this day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon at lunch, and one in the evening. A lot of companies are doing coffee chats or interviews throughout the day. It completely depends on the company, so I can't tell you who's doing what, but know that that's going on both Friday and Saturday, and to a very limited extent on Thursday. There are also some company receptions that are private and invite only, which is a good reason for you to register soon and get your information out there so they can find you and invite you. The Friday of the conference is also when the Career Expo happens. The Career Expo is intentionally kept at 3 hours and 3 hours only. The reason behind that is that over the last 19 years, we've discovered that success is better outside of the Career Expo, that the more organic connections actually tend to lead to true network building and true recruiting more often than a Career Expo. Career Expo is great to just get in front of somebody, but generally the bonds are not particularly strong. So that is kept at 3 hours, and we do encourage you to come to more than just the Career Expo for that reason. The Saturday of the conference, I will say that interviews and coffee chats continue pretty heavily. This is also the day where we have a whole pre-MBA section with an admissions, content, and expo. We also have more breakouts, generally geared more towards personal development and a little bit of kind of LGBT issues. More networking events. So there's an alumni reception. There are special interest receptions that day. And then this is also when our competitions are held. Saturday, we also have one keynote in the afternoon at lunch. So that's a high-level overview of what the format looks like. In terms of companies that are participating, last year we had 86 official companies, like I mentioned. They are from a pretty wide cross-section. I think if you look right now, we're in the mid-70s, and we are in negotiations with probably another 12 to 15 more. So we do think we're going to be pretty close to 90 participants this year. If you want to see the updated list, go onto our website, and there is a companies participating in ROMBA tab. So feel free to go there and check them out. But most of the folks that you see on this page, in fact, I think all of the folks that you see on this page are already committed and will be there. And obviously there are a handful of 70 plus others. So registering for ROMBA, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but in order to ensure a safe environment for LGBT students and their active allies, you can only register with an access code. There are 2 methods to get that: through your on-campus club, and if you don't know who the club leaders are, feel free to reach out to us and we'll put you in touch, or by completing an application, which is at the end of this deck. I will send out this deck, so don't worry about that. But those are the 2 methods that you can register. In terms of registration discounts, just something to kind of keep in mind, there are a few things that you can do. You can volunteer. So there is one registration option, which is student volunteer. What you're doing here is you're saying, I will commit 2 to 3 hours, usually to work the registration counter. You get to select what time it is based on what's still available. And you get a discount that right now is about $25 off, but once we go past the early bird period, I think it becomes about $40 off. So it's a pretty decent discount for 2 hours of your time. If you're a second year student, Home Depot has sponsored a scholarship this year that covers registration and housing. So you can apply for that. There are 6 scholarships that go out, and the deadline for that is right around Labor Day. And if you're at a school in New York, Chicago, or LA, this year we're launching a semester long LGBT MBA consulting project. So, where students will be assigned to a cross school team of 6 to 8 people, work with a PwC project manager and partner on an issue that a local nonprofit is facing over the course of about 8 weeks. So, each participant in that gets a free ROMBA conference registration. You can learn more about that online. It is open to both first years and second years, but you do need to be in the greater metropolitan area of these cities in order to be eligible. So, as we think about recruiting, the question often comes up: how do I let companies know I'm there? How do I get their attention? What do I do? How do I recruit? There are really 3 major things that you can do, 2 of which are before the conference, and 1 really is at the conference. So, one of the first things you can do, even before you're registered, to be really honest, is you can go and put your information on our resume database and search the job board. There are already some jobs that are up there, and that will continue to grow as we get into September. Companies very actively go through those resumes, so make sure you upload it, but also actively apply to things. And like I said, it is open to those who are not able to attend, as well as alumni. The second thing you can do is, as you register for the conference, you will be given a list of companies and asked which ones you are interested in. By doing so, you give us permission to let the companies know you're interested in them. So be fairly liberal as you do this. I wouldn't necessarily check all of them, but if there's somebody that you might remotely be interested in, I would encourage you to make sure to let them know. And they may very well follow up with you, invite you to events, invite you to coffee chats, based on your background and kind of what you think you might want to do. So definitely do that. If you want to go in and modify what you've checked off, you can always do that, and that will adjust the information we give companies appropriately. Those reports are live. So again, the earlier you register, the earlier companies have your information. And the third is networking at the conference. So our mobile app comes out late September. I think the target date is September 22nd. The schedule is also already online, though there may be some tweaks to it over the next 2 to 3 weeks. But review the schedule, see which sessions seem relevant. As the app comes out, you'll be able to see who the speakers are on each panel. So check and see what companies are represented, who you want to network. Go to those sessions, grab them after. It's a great opportunity to network and do it that way. You can also message them through the app, so that's just something else to keep in mind, that you can network and leverage technology to do that. Second thing is, make sure to go to receptions. These are often attended by recruiters, professionals, alumni. So whether you want to recruit or whether you just want to expand your network, it's a really great way to do that outside of your own personal school network, which is one of the downfalls that people get into at the ROMBA conference. They will stay with their peers, but if you are willing to go outside of that tight circle, you'll make a lot of contacts. And many times we've heard that some of the best connections or even best friendships that people have made have been folks that they met at a reception or event at the ROMBA conference. And then the third is the career fair, though, as I mentioned, we do keep it pretty short intentionally. So think about how you want to use that 3 hours, who you really want to talk to, who you want to wait for, and plan your time accordingly. So that's the best advice that I can give you there. In terms of recruiting at the conference, some questions that came up that come up pretty frequently that I'll go ahead and answer. So a company that I'm interested in will also be at my campus. Should I still talk to them at the ROMBA conference? Is it worth trying to network with them? My response to this is absolutely. So often companies have 2 recruiting paths, one of which is an on-campus path, and one of which is a diversity path or an LGBT path. And so if you think about a major company, so somebody like BCG, McKinsey, Bain, they all have specific LGBT recruiting paths that are often separate from their school paths. And so you actually increase your odds by networking, and you may build internal advocates that, regardless of whether you go through the diversity path or go through a school path, may advocate for you. So it's generally something that we very strongly encourage you to do. If there's a company you're interested in, even if they're coming to your campus, talk with them, network with them. You may not be interviewing with them, but the relationship could still be very helpful in the long run. Another question that surprisingly comes up frequently is, should I be out at the ROMBA conference? My answer to this is a resounding yes. You are, after all, at an LGBT conference. These companies are coming to this conference specifically because it's very, very difficult to identify LGBT talent outside of environments like this, because it is something that you can't see or necessarily readily identify. So they are very eager to meet LGBT talent. So please come out. And even if you're an ally, feel free to come out as an ally. It's not a bad thing, especially if you can talk about why you're there and your commitment to the LGBT community. Do interviews or offers happen at the ROMBA conference? The answer to this is a little tricky because it really is, it depends. Last year, a little over 50% of the companies did some form of interviewing or coffee chats. Um, I would say of those, only a handful gave offers, but a lot of them used them as first round interviews or kind of an informal get to know each other that will lead to something else offsite or on campus later on. So just keep that in mind as you think about how you might want to recruit while you're in school. So a quick conference prep list here, and then I'm going to take some questions if there are any. So what should you be doing, or what should you have done? You certainly should register. I think hopefully I pointed out the benefits of registering sooner rather than later. You should book your travel. Again, that hotel will sell out. The rate is $199. It will go away September 15th if it doesn't sell out first. Whichever happens first, there's nothing we can do after that. So keep that in mind. Upload your resume, submit it to jobs as applicable. So just go ahead and do that. You can do it even before you register. Review the schedule now, review it later in the app to see who's participating in things, and check out the competitions if you're interested in participating in them. There are also a handful of other aspects of the conference, such as the track, McKinsey's COI program, Community Outreach Program, that do require advanced sign up. All of those open again next week on August 22nd. So keep an eye out for that, because we will be emailing everyone who's registered, as well as club officers, to remind them that that is now going on. And then the other thing is, we will feed you over the next 6 weeks information about the companies, what they're recruiting for, what areas, who they're looking for. Research that and learn a little bit about the industries and about what the roles might be. One of the criticisms that we often hear from companies is that people may show up not completely prepared. And so if you know you're going to network with financial companies, know at least the basic difference between investment banking, asset management, wealth management. Because if you don't know that, it's hard for them to take you seriously. They don't expect you to have a deep knowledge of it, but just know the basics of it, particularly if you're planning to try to network or speak with companies in that industry. And then the last thing, which may not be applicable for everyone, but if it is, I would encourage you to do it. Prep with your club members. So whether they're first timers or whether they're the club leaders, second years, and sometimes even the career office, help people prep for the conference and think about how they want to allocate their time. You can allocate your time so it's not all work and recruiting. You definitely should have fun. If you read any of the profiles we have of the student steering committee this year, they all say if you manage your time appropriately, you can have a ton of fun and network and recruit. So basically everything that you want to do. So make sure you kind of prepare and have a sense of what you want to get out of the conference before you go to it. So I'll let it sit on this slide. And like I said, I will send out this deck. But on this slide, you'll see links for registration, for the hotel, for the job board, and for the conference schedule. So I'll pause here and see if there are any questions. Feel free to type them in or raise your hand. Would I happen to know if there's a shuttle from the airport to the hotel? As far as I know, we have not personally arranged one. I am not sure that the Hyatt offers one. I can look and see, and if there is, I'll make sure that it goes into some form of our marketing materials. Oftentimes, we do see a lot of people sharing an Uber or something along those lines. You can get Uber from both Dallas Fort Worth and Love Field. Love Field, for what it's worth, is a closer airport to the hotel than Dallas Fort Worth. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, hang on. I'm going to unmute you, Michael. Go for it, Michael. What's up?
How soon will you know if you are accepted to be a volunteer, if you decide to go that route?
So if you apply to be a student volunteer,
Yes.
if you apply for it and there are spots open, so basically if you can still register as it, that means you will be accepted. So the second you register for that and sign up for your time spot, consider it confirmed.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, my pleasure. Cool. Any other questions? All right. Well, if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to me. My email is very easy. It's matt@reachingoutmba.org. And I'm happy to help you or point you to one of our staff members who can. And we certainly look forward to welcoming everybody in Dallas at the 19th annual ROMBA Conference. We'll see you in about 6 weeks. Thanks so much.